Congressman, thanks for joining us on this. Appreciate it. I know you had some technical difficulties, and so appreciate you sticking with us through that. So you just heard from my colleague Ryan Nobles talking specifically first about the Ukraine aid. And I want to hear from President Biden, who spoke from the South Lawn earlier today, and kind of putting what is happening with Ukraine right now, what has happened with Alexei Navalny as well, on the shoulders of Republicans and not being able to pass an aid package. Let's listen to the president, and then we'll talk.
They're making a big mistake not responding. Look, the way they're walking away from the threat of Russia, the way they're walking away from NATO, the way they're walking away from meeting our obligations is just shocking.
So I asked Ryan if Republicans at all are more enthused about getting any aid packages passed, considering the death of Navalny, and he said no. So what is to be done here?
Well, we have two very acute crises right now. One is at our southern border in particular, and one is whether we're going to defend democracies around the world, including Ukraine in particular. And those two crises are very much interlinked. They're interlinked substantively, they're interlinked politically, and they need to come to the floor of the House in a package, because that's what it's going to take for us to try to pass out the aid to Ukraine that President Biden just referred to try to take care of the needs of Israel, of Taiwan, and also to do what we have to do at the southern border. This is a matter of trying to assemble a coalition, a mainstream coalition in the U.S. House of Representatives that can get these bills passed. The Senate did a good job, I thought, on the supplemental. That's before us now. If I had that to vote on, I would vote on it. But the reality of the U.S. House of Representatives today is it's a different political creature, and you've got to put a package together that can actually work for the mainstream and muster a majority. And that's what the bill that we did on a bipartisan basis proposes. It proposes a solid solution on both fronts. And so President Biden is correct on the urgency of Ukraine. But what I'm focused on is the practical reality of the U.S. House of Representatives and how you muster a bipartisan majority to get a bill passed out of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Can you talk about the impact of not getting aid like this passed inside of an election year, when you have a leader acting with impunity like Russian President Vladimir Putin, continuing to advance on the Ukrainian military, taking over more and more key cities, taking out opposition leaders like Alexei Navalny, and other aid packages that have also not passed in addition to both Ukraine and Israel?
Well, it's absolutely critical that we passed them, and it's absolutely critical that as much as we possibly can, we try to get the election year politics out of it. I know that that's a tall order, but it is something that we have to strive for, because if we allow our domestic election politics to drive each and all of these issues, we're never going to get anywhere. And in fact, that's what we've seen to date. Again, looking at the Senate, they were able to overcome those election year issues, at least enough to get a solid supplemental pass. So it's not impossible to do, but you have to apply a matter of political will and a matter of priorities and a matter of saying, look, we're going to be tugged in every which way. The candidates are going to tug us in every which way. But we, the United States Congress, in particular the U.S. House of Representatives at the moment, because that's where the critical issue lies, we have to get this job done. Now, of all of the issues that we have talked about, clearly Ukraine is the most urgent, is the most acute. And it is a very, very tenuous situation in Ukraine right now. The murder of Navalny by Putin, and that's what it was, a murder, only drives home the point about how dangerous Russia today under Putin's leadership is. And our allies and friends in Munich were asking the basic question, is the United States going to continue to lead this world? And I think the answer to that has to be yes. And that takes action, not just words.
We have about 30 seconds, sir. March 1st is the deadline. Are we headed towards a government shutdown when you talk about domestic politics?
I don't think so. I think we are all pretty committed to getting through the appropriations process. The negotiations are going pretty well. Obviously, we have to jump over some hoops to get there, but I believe not.
Per usual. Congressman Ed Case, if you're home in Hawaii, enjoying the weather. Thank you, sir.
I am enjoying